All right. Assalamu alaikum. I pray everyone is doing great, inshallah. Thank you all very much for joining us for our Islam 101 class today. May Allah bless you all. Thank you all very much. I know many of us, if not all of us, are still trying to get back into the swing of things post Ramadan. Sometimes they call it the post Ramadan blues, but alhamdulillah, it's great to see everyone taking time on and joining us today, inshallah. We are indeed honored and privileged to have with us our dear Sheikh Tariq. Sheikh Tarik, for those of you if you don't know, he is the religious director of OCIF, Orange County Islamic Foundation, the mosque in Mission Viejo. So he'll be conducting our session here today, inshallah, God willing. And then, of course, at the tail end of the conversation, we have announcements. We want to hear from you as well regarding any questions per the topic, inshallah. So without further ado, Sheikh Tarik, floor is all yours. Thank you.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Amma ba'd. As always, it's a pleasure to be here. Is it live streaming? So for those who are joining us live streamed, or for those who will watch this video later on, I understand life, has its arrangements, and sometimes it forces us to be in places, certain places rather than others. But as we get out of the COVID era, I'm really going to push not only this community but also my own community to start coming back to the message in person. And to do that for today, for those who did come, you drove however long. Each step that you take here, each tire rotation that it took to come here, and each tire rotation that it will take to go back, you get a reward for each and every one of those. Right? One rotation will raise your rank in paradise, and the other will remove a sin. So imagine how much. And then the gas money, who can't forget about the gas money, that becomes a source of charity. This is an act of sadaqah that you get reward for. The time that you spent in the masjid, or you spend in the masjid, every moment we know that we're in the masjid, we're getting reward for that. Inshallah, you learn a thing or two today. You prayed jama'ah with us, and all of that is reward upon reward upon reward that we will truly rejoice over in the next life. So to encourage those who might be, still in the COVID era, in terms of how they go about community affairs, please do start coming back. Really push yourself to come, even if the first few times you have to force yourself. Your presence brings happiness to everyone who's actually present. So I pray that you all are well. I pray that you enjoyed your Eid, and I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts our Ramadan. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Now, the topic for today is really inspired by our last conversation, and last two times I was here, really revolving around children. My child, are they a Muslim or not? How do I raise my child? I'm a Muslim. The father is not a Muslim. What do we do? And so today's talk was inspired by that. And at the same time, Brother Jamal asked me to try and keep the momentum of Ramadan going. And so what I'll do is, for most of the time, I'll talk about this first topic: how do we instill Iman in our children? And I'm glad to see the children here, alhamdulillah. And then it can also be a source of inspiration in terms of how do we keep up our momentum even after Ramadan. Okay, so with that, I turn our attention to Surah Luqman, the 31st chapter. Luqman, it said that he was of African descent. It said that he is of African descent. And most scholars, as far as I know, say that he wasn't a prophet, but he was a very pious individual. He was a very pious individual and a very wise one. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored this man by not only naming an entire chapter after him, Luqman, but also in that chapter there is an entire page that's talking about his conversation, a conversation he had with his child. And so this is the Quran. This is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine Allah taking what you said and then saying it on your behalf and making it a source of guidance for the nation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the believers. So this is some pretty valuable disciplinary tools that we can have here. And so I'm not going to go through all of it, but how does he engage his child? We want to understand this. Well, the first thing he says is, يَا بُنَيْ إِنَّهَا إِن تَكُ مِثْقَالَ حَبَّةٍ مِّنْ خَرْدَلٍ فَتَكُنْ فِي صَخْرَةٍ أَوْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ أَوْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَأْتِ بِهَا اللَّهُ. Inna Allah latifun khabir. The first thing he tells his child, "Oh my child, if it were the size of a mustard seed." Now, this phrase in the Arabic language is a phrase to say the smallest thing possible. Today we say an atom. It's as small as an atom. Back then it was a mustard seed. That's what it is. Or mithqala dharra. I'm sorry, not a mustard seed, an ant. A dharra is an ant, a very small ant. You know how there are different sizes of ants? The super small one, that's a dharra. That was just a phrase to reference the smallest thing possible. So he's telling his child, "Oh, my child, if a thing, an affair, a deed, a word, whatever it is, was as small as the small ant, right? And not only that, it would be hidden in the depths of the earth or the elevations of the skies or the heavens or inside a rock. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about it. And Allah is Latif Khabir. Latif, this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very beautiful. The name Latif means, it has actually a few different meanings, but the way it's being used here is it's referring to bringing good to someone in a way they don't even realize it. Very subtly, bringing some sort of benefit to someone, protecting them from some sort of harm without them even realizing it. Now, as parents, right, we know all about this. How many times do we protect our children from something they don't even know it's happening? Or we provide them with something they don't even realize it. So yesterday, we had the Eid festival at my masjid. And it was the sun, was pretty hot that day. It was a cool day, but the sun was just over our heads. And, a child can only handle so much. So as my child is standing, I would position myself in a way that shades him. And this isn't anything special I'm doing. All parents do this. So the child is enjoying the shade while I'm enduring the heat. And again, this isn't something unique that I do. All parents do this. Or maybe when they're playing around, there's that table with the corner, right? And you put your hand on the corner, right? So you know what I'm talking about. The child doesn't realize this. This is lutf in the Arabic language. It's called lutf. It's bringing good, protecting someone in a very subtle way to the extent that they don't even know it. So Luqman is teaching his child that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's like this. He's Latif. He's also Khabir. The name Khabir means to know the smallest of details, to be very well acquainted with all that's going on. And so, you have parents who, although they might have this subtlety in providing their children, not all parents are very acquainted with the challenges of their children, especially the immigrant generation, people who come from different cultures, different countries. It's hard for them to realize, to know what are the challenges of my children, because their upbringing is very different than their child's upbringing. And this was one of the major challenges of my generation growing up in terms of engaging our parents. Our parents had no idea what's going on in school. To them, they don't hear about sexuality until they get married. A lot of men and women, they learn about sexuality when they get married. It's kind of like, okay, you're on your own. Figure it out. Us growing up here in America, 6th grade comes around, you start hearing things you've never heard in your life as soon as 6th grade hits. And so you have this disconnect. They don't have khibra, they don't have acquaintancy with really what's going on. But Luqman is teaching his child, Allah knows. He's acquainted with what's going on. He's acquainted with you. He knows all that's in your mind. He knows what you're going through. He knows why you do what you do. He knows what you're doing, what your goal is. And so from here, we take the first way we as parents can help instill Iman in the hearts and minds of our children. And that is through teaching them the names and attributes of Allah. The names and attributes of Allah. Now, we all probably have some amount of experience with the names and attributes of Allah. We heard of them. We know that Allah is most merciful, the benevolent. He has the name. He's the Almighty. We're familiar with this. But what happens a lot is that when we engage the younger generation in terms of these names, as parents, our minds are more developed, we're more experienced, and so the theoretical realm is more practical to us. We understand it more. To the child, the theoretical makes no sense. It makes no sense. And so when I engage my child, and I'm telling him, about Allah's names and attributes. I think Allah is the Khaliq. This is what I'm focusing on. Allah created everything. So he's thinking about, who's this Allah person? I mean, who's this Allah? And then he sees on YouTube, oh, is that Allah? Baba, Allah this? Can a dinosaur bite Allah? I mean, how does this work, right? To him, the notion of being outside of space and time is simply ungraspable. He cannot grasp it. It makes no sense. He needs the tangible. And so look at Luqman, how he's teaching his child. He's saying, oh, my child, you see the heavens, you see the sky above you, you see the rock, you see the earth. Anything going on in these areas, Allah knows about it. Now we know how to take a name of Allah and make it tangible to the heart and mind of the child, to make it practical, to connect the child to Allah through the world around him or her. This is how we begin to instill Iman. And it's so easy. It's so easy. And not only that, you teach yourself before you teach your child. And so whenever you work with Allah, by the way, I always notice this. Maybe you've noticed this too. Whenever we work with Allah, we're always getting at least two good things. It's never just one thing. It's always two or three or four or five. SubhanAllah. And so what do? Well, we first look at a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We want to look at the more tangible ones. The ones that are easily graspable by the mind of a child. Al-Khaliq, the creator. Al-Musawwir, the one who gives the image. The provider, the one who gives. The strong, Al-Qawi. Children, they understand strength. They can really grasp this. And look at Allah's names and attributes. And start saying, oh, look, Allah created the sky above you. You see that? And you see this animal? Allah is the one who gave it its image. It's easy for them to connect it because not only do they see these things, they actually like these things, especially animals. Now, we might think, okay, this is a little bit too young for my child. My child's a little bit older than this. No problem. The same model, just upgrade the way you're presenting the information. For younger children under the age of 6, it has to be these simpler things, something that's very tangible around them. Once they hit 6, 7 years old until about 12, you can look at animals. They love animals. Right? Compares animals to human beings. They get it. And so your child comes and says, mommy, right, why does daddy have hair on his face, but you don't? This is an important question, and we have to have a good answer for it. You can say, well, Allah created men a certain way, Allah created women a certain way. But look at lions and lionesses. Why does the lion have a mane around him and the lioness doesn't? It clicks in their mind and it teaches them something, and that instills in their heart and mind that, hey, there's a difference between male and female. And Allah created males in a certain way and females in a certain way. Especially in our time, the time of gender everywhere, right? It's so easy to begin to instill these principles in their heart and their mind. So you have this example of Al-Khaliq. Allah created this and Allah created that. So now every time the child goes outside and they grow up, their connection to nature is more than just, this is just a tree and this is just a sky and this is just a mountain. Or if they're a little bit more, academic and studious, the tree provides oxygen and absorbs carbon dioxide, and the sky serves in terms of the science of astronomy. The sky has this function in nature, or the mountain has this function in geology or geography. It's more than just science. It's actually an image of Iman, a symbol of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. You look at might, Al-Qawi. You see how the eagle is stronger than a pigeon? Allah is Al-Qawi. He's the powerful. Allah gave the eagle its strength. Okay? And look at Allah's names and attributes. And every week, try and go through one. Try and go through one. And it's so simple, so unique, but it's so powerful. And you won't start seeing the fruits of this until later on in life. Because when they're raised by these principles, now you have connected the world around them to Allah. And you've connected them to nature, and you connected nature to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a much healthier lifestyle, not only psychologically, not only physically, but also spiritually. And it's so simple, so easy. So you see Luqman doing this. Right? Now, Luqman's son is probably a little bit older. Why? Because he's starting to connect his actions, the actions of his child, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our children, they're under the age of responsibilities. Or for those children under the age of responsibility, it might not make sense. But as a child grows, again, take the model, take the idea, and apply it to the child. Now, let's say your child is already in their 20s. Now they get a little bit trickier, right? No problem. You still can take the same idea. We have to teach our children the names and attributes of Allah. But for a 20-plus-year-old in college, you're going to have to go to the scientific research. Or you're going to have to go to values. Right? Americans value charity. Americans value human rights, let's say. Well, can you connect some of Allah's names and attributes to these things? It'll click in their mind more. Right? And so this is number one when it comes to instilling iman in the hearts and minds of our children, the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Start with that. Take a name, try to say in the Arabic language. Right? Try you yourself, look at the verses in the Quran that uses this name. You're educating yourself, you're building your own iman, and now you can transfer it to your children. Right? Repeat it over and over again, especially if they're younger. Keep saying the name over and over again. It'll click in their mind, it'll sink in. They're sponges, we know this. Right? So that's number one. The second thing, which is also mentioned here in this chapter, Luqman then a little bit later says, وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. Be patient with the things that come to you in life. وَلَا تُصَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. Do not be arrogant in the way you present yourself. Right? Do not be condescending in how you talk to other people, how you communicate to other people. إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. This is really strong will. Good character is strong will. Children, when they go to school and they've been raised with iman. Oh, my child, don't use foul language. Don't lie. Don't make fun of other people. Right? Don't do conniving things. Be honest. Be straightforward. In the school environment, even in the work environment, it's almost as if they're put in a disadvantage. Because the bullies in school, the in crowd, so to speak, they're the ones who's using foul language. And so when this child is being confronted, and the one confronting them is using foul language, is breaking the rules, and this child feels confined, well, I can't say these things. I can't break the rules. It goes against my principles. They feel weak, right? And so Luqman is teaching us this is true strength. True strength is when we stick to our principles, even in scenarios when it's better or it seems more advantageous not to. To teach, to rearrange, to reframe the idea of strength. As the Prophet ﷺ teaches us, he says that a strong person isn't someone who can overpower someone else. A strong person is someone who's able to maintain good character even though they're upset. That is a strong person. And so although they might not win the fight, right, they still realize internally that I actually won because I behaved with true strength. So he's teaching his child what? Characteristics. Continuing, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like the arrogant and the boastful person, the prideful person. وَقْصِدْ فِي مَشْيِكَ. Be balanced, moderate in the way you walk. Even the way you walk, it sends a message. Us growing up back in the 90s, we had the baggy stuff. You remember that? The baggy era? I remember. You remember that? When I moved out to college at the age of 21, my mom told me to clean out your closet. And I still had clothes that I bought when I was 14, 15. Tried them on, they were big on me. The baggy era. And the way you walk with style and whatnot, right? It sends a message. Right? So when you walk, you're sending a message. Be moderate in the way you walk. Be upright in the way you walk. وَغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ. And when you speak, don't speak in an obnoxious way. You know how some people, they speak and they're just obnoxious. They won't let anyone else speak, and they speak loudly. So why are you screaming? Why are you yelling? It's just two of us here. Speak with moderation. Indeed, the worst of voices are the voices that are like donkeys, that really annoying noise. And so what is Luqman doing here? He's giving us a second clue in terms of how to build iman in our children. That is through characteristics, teaching them these are the Islamic characteristics. And the same thing applies when it comes to the previous point. How we teach them Allah's names and attributes is how we teach them character. So you look at the characteristics of a believer, the characteristics of prophets. Let's take, for example, al-qana'a, contentment. Contentment. If your child is younger, learn the word in Arabic and start repeating it you yourself. You have a Muslim friend over, talk about it. They're listening. Right? I always test this out with my wife. My wife is like talking about something, I'm looking at him, he's looking, pay attention to everything, right? So when you're having a conversation with another friend about this, your child is listening, right? They're absorbing it, they're taking it in, they're learning, wait a minute, I have to be content. And then, of course, talk to them directly. How can you do that? Well, you have some toys here. I want to buy a toy. You go to Walmart, you go to grocery stores, they want a toy. So you know what? We bought a toy last time. You have to be happy with the toys you want. You need to be content. Kind of highlight that word. You need to be content. And so each week, take a characteristic, teach yourself, and then teach it to your child. So character here is what Luqman is teaching his child. What time do we have until? Another 15, 20 minutes? Okay.
How old is your son, Shaykh?
He's 4. Yeah, he's 4. And so you have, for example, contentment. Another characteristic is patience. You know, some children are they have a temper, and of course, you know your children. You know which characteristics are more necessary, more kind of important right now than others. No child is born with all good characteristics or all bad characteristics. They have some good, and they have some that needs improvement. So start on the ones that need improvement, right, and work on it week by week, by week. The idea here is that this isn't going to bear its fruits in the next week or two or the next month. We want to see the fruits of our parenting once they hit their 20s. This is where we want to see their fruits. Once they become really independent, they get into the workforce. That's the plan here. Right? And of course, the sooner we begin, the more impactful we will be. The sooner we will begin, the easier the teenage years will be. And that alone is enough, right? The sooner we work on them, the younger they are, the easier the teenage years will be in the night ta'ala. So the first one was what? Mm-hmm. Second? I'm sorry?
Connect the names with something that is easy for them to connect with.
So that's part of the first one, right? So the names and attributes of Allah, how do we teach it to them? We want to connect the world around them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is so important. This is where the theoretical side doesn't work, period. I need something practical. And even in the adult's life, if we cannot see Allah in the world around us, His names and the attributes, Allah is just something abstract. And if a child's understanding of Allah is just abstract, by the time they hit their 20s, like, what do I need this God for? What do I need Him for? How is He relevant in my life? And you see this in the shows that we see, right? You know, where's God? You know, what's the point of worshiping Him? And so what happens with a lot of parents is that they say Allah and they pray, and then they only have the theoretical side. And by the time the child grows up, it's like, I mean, what's the point of all this? So number one, we want to teach them Allah's names and attributes. Number two is maintain strength. No, that's under the second one. When you teach them Islamic characteristics, right? It's very easy. You have all the resources, right? There's literally a 13-volume book of good characteristics, bad characteristics. In English, the characteristics of the Prophet, ﷺ, whether in Quran or in Hadith. Very easy. It's all at your fingertips. Right? So that's the second thing Luqman, may Allah bless him, is teaching his child. The third thing, it's not really mentioned here, right? But the idea is that Allah is presenting these verses as a story. He's giving us a story. There's this man named Luqman, and Luqman was with his child. He had a conversation with his child. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these verses, He actually is engaging them in their conversation. Not directly, But in these verses, Allah is telling us Luqman is having this conversation with his child, and Allah is also having an indirect conversation with them. So Luqman begins by teaching his child that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship. Don't worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he begins by focusing on the rights of Allah. Allah then comes in and says, you missed something. You forgot to teach your child about your rights, the rights of parents. Now, Luqman I don't think he forgot to teach his child. But as parents, we know that if we start telling our children, you have to serve me, you have to obey me, they rebel. They don't like that. But when someone else tells them, hey, you should respect your parents, they take it more to heart. So Luqman is wise. He understands that it makes no difference. It's probably counterproductive for the parent to start telling his child or her child, hey, you have to be good to me. It doesn't work that way. Right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and says, don't forget about the rights of parents. So Allah is even engaging this. He's giving us a story here. And this is the third thing, the third way we instill Iman in the hearts and minds of our children, through stories. Through stories, through stories. 1/3 of the Quran is stories. It's stories, right? Now, when we look at all of Hollywood, all these movies are what? They're stories. And they make billions upon billions of dollars. But there is a fundamental difference between the Hollywood version of stories, I should say the Western world stories, versus the Eastern world, of how the Eastern world tells stories. The Western world focuses on moving emotions. They want you to cry because of something. They want you to be emotionally connected to the characters. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing unethical about that. That's the goal. They want to arouse your emotions as you watch this story. The Eastern world, when they say stories, they want you to take lessons. They want to transform your behaviors. That's what they want. That's how the Quran is. Allah tells us, He gives us the best of stories, the stories of the prophets. Why? Because they're transformative. They build character. Right? And we all know that role models influence us tremendously. And everyone has a role model. Everyone does. The question is, who is our role model? Is our role model the Prophet ﷺ or the prophets, the righteous people, the people who Allah praised, or is it LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and the celebrities and all that? Who is our role model? So if you want to instill Iman in the hearts and minds of our children, we need to tell them stories, because it just hits their mind very, very effectively, and it transforms them. You can tell them stories from the life of the Prophet, from the life of prophets. Of course, each age has a different way of presenting it. Let's start with a younger age. You want to talk about, so you could take the two previous points, the names of Allah and the characteristics. You want to talk about compassion. Oh, my child, you need to be compassionate, right? You need ra'fa, compassion. Well, look up and Google, literally Google this. The Prophet, the story of the Prophet, and compassion. You'll find something. Of course, take it from the authentic sources, so long as it goes back to one of the books of hadith, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, one of these known resources, take it and use it. You want to see how the Prophet was compassionate to a bird. There's a story, and you can tell it to your child. So, let's say they're 4 years old. One time the Prophet والسلام, was sitting by a tree, and a bird came to him, and the bird started complaining to the Prophet that someone took my eggs. This is the actual story. And the Prophet ﷺ said, who took this bird's eggs? And one of the companions came and said, Ya Rasulullah, I took it. Right? And he said, give it back to the bird. See, the Prophet was compassionate. A 4-year-old can understand this. Let's say they're a little bit older. Right? Their question to come to my mind, well, how does the Prophet understand the bird? Well, talk to them, have this conversation. Right? If they are older, 20 years old, what is this nonsense? Birds don't talk. Humans cannot understand, this. You just have to present it in a way that is able to engage that question of, well, what's going on here? The model is the same, but how we present it is going to differ based on age. So that's one example, compassion. You can look at, for example, Contentment. Another story when it comes to contentment. A man was to be rewarded by a king, and the king told this man, just go walk as far as you want, as far as you go, and when you mark it, that's all the land that I'll give you. So this man was excited, went, kept going, 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 and no matter how far he went, he wasn't content with what he wanted, with where he reached. And he went so far that he got lost and couldn't make his way back, and he got nothing out of it. This is what happens when we're not contentful. So you take the story, they're all over. There's thousands of stories out there. You don't know one, that's okay. I wasn't too much of a storyteller until I started forcing myself to learn these stories. Google it. Right? Google the Prophet ﷺ and contentment, the Prophet ﷺ and compassion. The story, you'll get the story, it's all there. The scholars of Islam and this, you'll find it. The Abu Bakr and this, you can find all of this. So the stories will come, and it's very tangible to the mind of the child, and it's entertaining to them. They like to hear it. Now, we have all of these three. You have teaching them the names and attributes of Allah, teaching them the characteristics, and teaching them stories. Now, a child forgets. We need to go through a process of actually causing it to take root in their hearts. Saying it once, that's only a start. And so we have a 3-step process. The first step is introducing them to it. How do we introduce our children to these concepts? Through repetition. Through repetition, right? Saying the word. Repetition either directly to them or in an indirect conversation. You have a conversation with someone else and they're listening, right? Through repetition. Now the ideas in their mind, they've been introduced to it. Now we try to make it into a type of practice, either through a story, either through your own practices. So you're walking and you see like a twig or a branch on the floor, on the sidewalk. You pick it up and you remove it. Say, I'm being compassionate because someone might walk and they might trip over it, or someone's on a scooter, right? It might cause them to fall. So I'm removing it in compassion. And Allah is the compassionate. And the Prophet ﷺ is compassionate. And we as believers, we love this attribute. So you bring it into the tangible. And then you start going to the third step, and that is to develop experience. You want them to experience this themselves. Because, I saw a very beautiful video the other day. And it was this young man. He would walk to work. And as he was going, he would do these very small acts of kindness. He would see an old lady kind of having trouble holding something, so he would help her. He would see a beggar, and he would give her some money. They had written down that this is going to go to the education of my daughter and all of that. And so every day, and they're showing the people who's observing him, saying, what is this guy doing? Why is he keep giving? He's getting nothing in return. I mean, it's not a very profitable way of living. And so the video goes on, it's constant repetition. He's constantly doing this until at the end of the video, there was a plant that he would keep putting in a certain place where the water, when it would rain, would come down and it would maximize how much water it's getting. After some time, he started seeing the fruits actually growing. And then he went to the beggar that he would see every single day. It would be her and her daughter. But this time her daughter isn't there. And then her daughter comes and she's wearing the school uniform. And then the old lady, I don't know what exactly happened. There was something about it. And the lesson here was, when you give, when you behave in these ways, although other people aren't giving you, you're actually receiving something. And that is emotions. You're receiving emotions. And that is the life of the heart. Emotions are the life of the heart. That's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. We want them to experience this. Yes, we live in the era of why this, why that, why. But some people might know the answer to why. Okay, but I'm not interested in it. And there's only so much we can do to answer the why. I mean, it's an endless cycle. Why this? Why? You can always ask why about anything. But the best way of really instilling things in the hearts and mind of a person is for them to experience it. This is the third step. We want them to experience it, to practice it. How did it feel to feed? You go to a petting zoo. How did you feel to be nice? How does it feel to be nice to these animals? To pet them, to be gentle to them. You want them to feel it, right? Now, of course, these are children. It's not going to be just always an incline. It's going to go up and down, but no problem. Our goal is that eventually it sits in their heart. Sooner, if it takes 20 years, no problem. So long as they reach the goal, that's our goal, alhamdulillah. Let it take as long as it needs. But it's very simple. If you feel like your child got to level 3, and then they start going back to level 2, that's okay. Go back to level 2, work on that until they get to level 3. If they're at level 3 and then they go back to 2 and they go back to 1, that's okay. Go back to 1 and start all over again. The same thing with salah, prayer. We want our children to pray. Start at level 1. Get them introduced to the idea, why it's important. And then try to get them to do it every now and then. If your child starts by praying once a day, that's a start. It's a start. Then try slowly to get them to 2 a day and let them choose which prayer they want to do. Don't dictate upon them. Okay, you see these 5 prayers? Can we make a deal? And they love it when you they feel like you're compromising, right? They're making a deal with you. So can we just agree on one? You could choose whichever one you want. Agree on one. Okay. Few months later, get to the second one. They've experienced it now. Now prayer makes more sense instead of it just being a concept. So this is the 3-step path towards instilling these ideas, these concepts in their hearts and their minds. We start by introducing it to them, and then we start by rooting it in their hearts, and then we want them to experience it. Right? This is the 3-step process for these 3 things, which were the names and attributes of Allah, the characteristics of Islam, and then these stories. Maybe I mentioned this, I forgot, but the story part is meant to reinforce the first 2, the names and attributes of Allah, as well as the characteristics. There's a lot that can be said about how to instill faith in our children. It's a challenge, and we have a lot going against us, but to be very honest, it's actually a lot easier than we think. I have come to learn that it's easier than we think, but we as parents need to make the time for this. We need to make the time for this. It doesn't take too much time either. If we could spend 15 minutes a day with our children having these conversations, when we go to the playground, right? When we go here or there, just take advantage of it. You're driving to the playground. You're at the playground, right? Ask them, you see this tree? Can you remind me of a story that we talked about that involves a tree? Let them remember. Now you're reinforcing that story in their heart. Now when they see the tree, you ask them, what name of Allah does it remind you of? So it reminds me of this name and that name. Now the tree and all trees become a symbol of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something that reinforces their Islam. This is strength. This is Iman. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq.
All right, thanks, Shaykh Tarik. I had to wait till it turns on. And Allah bless you. That's you've motivated me even more to do. Some of you might remember we used to have pre-pandemic because we're blessed. When I see number one, when I see the kids here, the youth here, I'm so happy.
Yep.
I'm so happy. At one point, I think they outnumbered the adults here today, which is really nice. So pre-pandemic, we used to actually have a session since the adults are coming to learn about Islam. It would be really nice to also have a session for the kids privately. And so we would have that, at least crafts and activities and maybe, 1 or 2 things about, of course, the faith. So I will definitely want to re-examine that and go back into. So you motivated me.
I'd love to lead that.
Okay.
Yes.
Inshallah.
I'll bring my son too.
Excellent. How are we going to do it if you're doing this session? And can we have you for 2 sessions?
That's fine.
Because what we do is like simultaneously the kids would be in like the side room over here. And then somebody would be helping, but maybe, if you can maybe help us on that, that'll be great.
I'll be more than happy to.
Alhamdulillah. All right. Sister Catherine, I'm signing you up. You're gonna help us. Sister Rhonda, everyone, I'm signing everybody. You guys gotta help.
What we can do, Jamal?
Summer break first. Okay, I know.
What we can do?
I'm getting too excited. I know. Inshallah.
We can do kind of 2 portion, where a portion of the kids' time is doing an activity, and someone can lead that, and another portion can be more of kind of a story or something like that. And then this way I can navigate between both.
Perfect. Alhamdulillah. So let me go to the drawing board, inshallah. I'm gonna put something together as best we can. I'll coordinate with you, Shaykh Tarik, and with the class as well. Would that be okay with everyone? Those that want to bring kids or nieces or nephews, etc. Perfect. Alhamdulillah. Again, please forgive us with so many different things that are happening, and we're blessed. sometimes we get stretched a little thin, and so we're just trying to do our best to go back to the drawing board, inshallah. So you really motivated us to and empowered us to go back to it, because it's so simple, right? As you said, it's
Very
just you
simple.
have to sit down 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. I've tried it with my kids as well, certain things like that, and it's effective. Even like giving donation, like actually having them drop like $1 inside,
Yes,
goes a long way for them.
very long way.
Learning how to do like the tap now. They want to actually put the money in, but they're like, no, I want to use a credit card. I'm like, okay. So small things like that. Those are good memories to have that they're going to implement, inshallah. So excellent, Shaykh Tarik. Thank you so much. Sorry, I was in and out. Maybe you've already mentioned this. Few pointers or tips for the
Yes, I'm
momentum,
sorry.
if it's
Yes.
okay.
I actually did write that
I
down.
appreciate it.
So what I just mentioned can be our continuation of Ramadan. Ramadan is meant to be a transformative month, a month that leaves our iman in a stronger state than when we began it. And so to continue that spirit, we can start practicing the things that were mentioned. But also to add to that is really doing what we do in Ramadan after Ramadan. And that's one of the goals of Ramadan, that it gets us used to doing these things so that we continue doing it afterwards. Interestingly enough, I guess research shows that in order to get into a habit or to break a habit, it takes 30 days. So now you see all these 30-day challenges on YouTube and whatnot. Of course, they're trying to make money. That's their challenge. But nonetheless, the idea is the same. It takes 30 days to build a habit and 30 days to break a habit. And so part of Ramadan is to build habits and to break certain habits. And specifically for the new Muslim group, fasting is very important. It's very important. And it's not just for new Muslims. Muslims who have either been involved, like born Muslims who have been involved in extreme behaviors, drugs, alcohol, dating, and all that, um, or people who aren't accustomed, like reverts, to fasting. Fasting does wonders when it comes to our desires and our willpower. And so Muslim spiritualists would recommend fasting for individuals who have fallen into what we call addictive behaviors. Right? Fasting is the way forward for them. It transforms them. It makes them in control. So to try to continue fasting. Now, there are many different ways of sunnah fasting. The most is the fast of Dawood, the Prophet Dawood, peace be upon him, which was day after day, every other day. Now, for parents and whatnot, that might not be the most plausible or reasonable, but that's one way. Another is Mondays and Thursdays. This was the fast of the Prophet ﷺ. He would fast every Mondays and every Monday and every Thursday. That's very doable. If we can do that, that would be great. If not, then 3 days of the month. Abu Hurairah, the noble companion, said that the Prophet ﷺ advised him to fast 3 days every month. Why 3 days? Well, our reward is multiplied by how much? Our good deeds are multiplied by how much? 10. Like 10. And so 3 times 10 is how much? 30, which is the entire month. Specifically, the full moon days, which are the 13th, 14th, and 15th of the lunar calendar. 3 days a month is very doable, but it's healthy for the soul. So to continue fasting if we can. Number 2, continuing night prayers. This is also very important for all Muslims, no matter where they are in their spiritual stage, spiritual journey. But for newer people, newly practicing Islam, night prayers is absolutely fantastic. It has this ability to really set the person on the path and keep them on that path. People who are newly practicing, because their body has yet to become used to living a Muslim life, night prayer is the sacrifice that they make that takes them away from kind of their recreational desires. What are we doing at night? Whether it's before we sleep or before Fajr prayer, what are we doing? We're watching TV, having a snack, right? Just doing casual things, or we're sleeping. When we implement night prayer into our lives, essentially what it's doing is it's breaking that desire. It's adjusting our behaviors to focus more on a purpose-based actions instead of our desires. And I'm speaking and I'm guilty. Right? I constantly find myself looking at this phone at night and just wasting my time. It's utterly wasting my time. And that's a shame on me. Right? But with Ramadan having just concluded, we're used to that night prayer. You don't have to do it before Fajr. If you could, that's just gold. But after Isha prayer, you prayed Isha prayer, you have 30 minutes, pray. Do salah. You put your kids to bed, you have 30 minutes before going to sleep, pray. Those 30 minutes are very valuable because it puts you in a situation where it's one-on-one between you and Allah, between you and God. And you take advantage of that time by making dua, personalizing that prayer through your dua, through your supplications. So continuing night prayer. And number 3, Ramadan is the month of the Quran. Continuing that relationship with the Quran. It's so important, so integral. Now, if you can recite the Quran in Arabic, great. If you can't, I recommend looking at lectures about the Quran. Find a good speaker that you like, that you enjoy, that really talks to your situation. People, different commentators on the Quran have different way of presenting the Quran. Find the one that really talks to your situation in whatever language you want. But continuing that connection with the Quran. If during the month of Ramadan you stop listening to music so that you listen to Quran, continue doing that. Don't go back to music. Continue listening to the Quran. So these are my 3 recommendations of how we continue to live the spirit of Ramadan, keep that momentum up after the month of Ramadan, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So continue fasting, very important. Night prayers, even more important. And then having that relationship with the Quran. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq. All right, any questions? Yes.
All right. I'll come around the mic if it's okay. Shaykh Tarik, thank you again very much. I really appreciate it. Allah bless you. We'll open it for questions on site and online as well.
I can't thank you enough for this lecture. It's really helpful for my children and for myself. I constantly tell my children that you have adults, even though they're adults, they don't have like adult brains sometimes, and they don't act like adults. So I see a lot that, how do I explain to my children that basically some people don't act like adults, even though they're adults at school or, within the community.
So your question is, how do you
How do I
convince them?
Besides saying that they may be
Right.
adults in body, but not in attitude.
So that it might be difficult for a young child to grasp that, because whenever they see someone older, they see them as more competent, stronger. It's just a natural way of them seeing it. But what you could do is start off with these characteristics, right? And then once some of these characteristics become instilled in their heart, you could start pointing out, you see that person, did they act with compassion or not? Right? Did they act with generosity or not? They act with wisdom or not? Now they understand, they have an understanding of what these things are, and they say, well yeah, kind of, what's this person doing? Right? And also the role models. That's another point I probably should have added. We need to make sure that they have the right role models. But that can be under the stories part, the 3rd point. Through the stories, we give them role models. They need to have good role models, especially in our climate where many families, both parents are working. When both parents are working, that automatically reduces our time with our children. And so we need them to be connected to role models that kind of will indirectly take care of them when we're not looking. Right? And so connecting them to proper role models through stories. We need our children to see these prophets as cool. Oh, these guys are cool. Right? In the 21st century understanding of the term cool. Perhaps we can have maybe another session on how to coolify our role models and our prophets. That would be an interesting talk.
Okay, and then the second part, I won't take any more time. When the other children at school are like cursing and telling them they're unpopular because they don't do all the, things that they do, how do you address that with your children? Like, that's not the cool thing to do. I mean,
right. So to adjust their understanding of what cool is, of what strength is, through the definition of Islam. Right? When we're able to build that reverence of the Prophet, ﷺ, make him the role model, and the Prophet says, a strong person, someone who's able to control themselves, who doesn't use these words even if they're upset, that's a strong person. And so even if the other person's behaving this way, it should be in the child's mind, or we hope that it's in the child's mind that this person's acting kind of, they're not acting right. You're welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. I have to share a
Alaikum
little
salam.
story. It's about the kids.
Sure.
Many years ago, my niece was 9 years old. She came from Mexico with my sister and family, and they stayed with us for about 2 weeks. And my niece, she's like, I wanna wear the hijab. I'm like, okay. So I thought she was playing wearing the hijab. And before they went to Mexico, she told me like, I wanna become Muslim. I wanna make my shahada. I'm like, huh? But you're 9. She says, yeah, but I want to. I want to be like this. And my sister is like, no way. Like, just leave her alone. And before she left, she's like, can we do it secretly? I told her, look, I have to respect your mom, but I'm going to give you 2 pieces of advice. Number one, just always ask Allah, ask God, worship God. Even if she takes you to church, always think about God. That's number one. And the second one that I thought is like, just don't eat pork. Just go like that. And she's like, okay, worship God and don't eat pork. I'm like, okay. SubhanAllah, she was 9. And then throughout the years, in her 15th birthday, my sister called me. She's like, what did you do to Paulina? She doesn't want to eat the sandwiches that I gave her. So she was not eating pork. And at the age of 17, we had a family reunion in Mexico. And I give her a copy of the Quran. And after 2 weeks, she called me and she's like, I want to become Muslim. I want to make my Shahada. So, subhanAllah, and I was thinking, like, at 9, when she was 9, is when, like, Allah allowed me to plant the seed on her. And you just plant seeds and Allah will make them grow. We don't know when, but inshallah will grow. That's what I want to share.
Mashallah.
And she became a teacher. Like she became Muslim and she was just like memorizing everything. Whatever, even we were going to the store and she had like the small book of du'as and she was memorizing them.
Mashallah.
We came to the masjid. I was going out and she pulled me from the back. I'm like, what? The dua? Like when you go out, I'm like, okay. So Allah guides people. Yeah. Just always keep your
Mashallah.
kids in your du'as and do what you are doing. Mashallah, they are very smart. And may Allah protect them. Anybody else?
Alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I just want to say thank you for this. Just right on the way here, we were talking with my daughter because she wants to wear like skirts, short skirts and crop tops and stuff like that. And I was telling her, I even say, look on my phone for teens Muslim fashion. So I can be like in the middle, you know. As you were saying all of those things, I have a few check marks that I do with them, like the stories and to see like in simple things like, oh, look, this roach is eating whatever. So Allah give us even to that roach that we step on them, is giving them food and stuff like that. But then it comes with this like the environment on the school because they're known Islamic school. And then she asked me, oh, when I'm middle school, do I have to wear the hijab all the time? Like, what about if they bully me and stuff? And I don't know how to, you know, I feel like I'm not doing enough to plan, like you say, the iman and them. Even if I, you know, she loves more. He's like distract all the time, or most of the times. But she's like, Mom, tell me more story, or tell me, let's finish this one. Remember when the, you know? And just want to thank you for offer yourself to give them
Of course.
something because
I'm benefiting before they
like
are, so
we really
alhamdulillah.
need it, and more because all our family is Catholic, and just one day that I pick up my nephews to bring them because they go to the same school, we start praying on the way our school, and they start laughing like, "What are you doing?" and stuff like that, and I don't want them to feel like on the side or I don't know, like excluded of everything because we are Muslims.
Right. So, as parents, don't pressure them into doing things they're not ready to do. Don't pressure them. it's not a make or break if they wear hijab now or in college or after college. It's not make or break. Of course, we want them to accept that this is something they're going to have to do, but we want them to make the choice. What happens a lot of times is when a lady, I'm talking about in the Muslim world, when a lady wears a hijab either because it's culturally expected or that her father kind of or mother pressured her into wearing it, somewhere down the line when they hit like what we call the midlife crisis, they heavily consider taking it off. I see this happen a lot. So the last thing we want is for them to start practicing Islam because they feel like they have to. So that's number one. When it comes to prayer, again, we want them at this age to accept that this is something that it's part of our life. It's part of being a Muslim. But to also appreciate that the companions, when they were in Mecca, they would hide and pray. A lot of them hid and prayed. Yeah, some people have the personality. Just go out and just say, hey, everybody, come here. I'm a Muslim, and get beat over it. And then get up and say, I'm a Muslim again, and get beat over it again. Some people have that personality. Some people don't. So understanding the personalities of our children is important. And then presenting Islam to them and organizing Islam in accordance to their personality. If they're not comfortable doing it in public, don't force them to. Have them come home, say, okay, when you come home, pray Dhuhr and Asr together. So long as they're praying, alhamdulillah, that's a huge accomplishment. Right? So that's another thing. Now, when it comes to how we feel weird and we're in public school and whatnot, try this. Learn about the wives of the Prophet, or learn about the women in the Quran and the life of the Prophet, and start telling stories about these women to your daughter, and say, who do you think you like most? You like this person, that person. So I think this person is interesting, and then build that perception of the stories of that particular lady in her mind, so that lady becomes a role model for your daughter. Right? This way, even if they feel kind of sidelined in the public life, at least, man, this is my role model. This is who I care to be like. These other people are irrelevant.
Assalamualaikum, Shaykh.
Come salam.
I'm not a mother yet, but I really
Inshallah,
appreciated this. Thank you, inshallah. I really appreciated this talk too. And as you were kind of going through these points, I thought about, my own, like growing up, and my parents are not Muslim, but I always say that like the one thing that I feel like they did for me was instill a love for God in my heart, and it's what led me to accept Islam. But like even just the two of these points, I feel like my own mother did for me. Like I remember she would give money to her family in Guatemala and kind of get into arguments with my dad about it. But she would always say, well, God is going to return that to us. And like maybe a month later, I would hear her say, oh, we got, this extra money from this job that we did. You see like how God has provided for us after we have given charity. Things like those kinds of stories. And she would always also tell us stories about the prophets and stuff. And when I started learning about the Quran is how I also was like very familiar with Islam. Like Islam was never foreign to me because of those stories that she would tell us about the prophets. And but I'm just really grateful to her for these things that she has instilled in my heart, because it's what led me to accept Islam.
Alhamdulillah, great. Inshallah, they become Muslim as well.
I'm gonna start crying today. It's a very emotional class. It's beautiful. Sheikh, thank you so much for this topic. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for opening up.
Just one last thing I wanted to say about the dress. My daughter is in the 4th grade, and her school goes up to the 6th grade. So you have girls coming to school in like halter tops and really short shorts, and they think they look cool. But my daughter always goes to school very conservative, fully dressed. And she already gets more attention from the boys and the girls and everybody else. And I tell her, they're going to look at those girls, but they're only going to look at them for a second. And then these boys are cleaning out her desk, buying her gifts. She's never showing anything. She's always classy, dressed very classy. And it always boosts her self-esteem, because the boys are forced to look in her face. and they're forced to engage with her as opposed to just looking at her body and objectifying her. Boys will look, but they will look for only a second. But when you have more to offer than just your body, there's more of a conversation. And my daughter's like a testament to that.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, on that point, you reminded me of something. The importance of, this is another point that we can add, the importance of letting them know what's the difference between a Muslim and a non-Muslim. Right? Really having these conversations. Look, we don't eat pork. That's the easiest conversation. Why don't we eat pork? It's unhealthy. Okay, so when they see their friends having pork, say, oh yeah, we're Muslim, we don't eat pork. Right? That's that simple. Alcohol is another easier conversation. But also when it comes to modesty and dress, this is a little bit harder of a conversation, especially for mothers with their young daughters. It's a harder conversation, but nonetheless, at least they know that, look, we as Muslims, we dress a certain way. Right? We simply don't fall in line with this way of presenting ourselves. But at the same time, understanding that there's a culture, there are certain things that they like in that age, and making sure that they have the clothing that matches that. So if a son likes, like my son, dinosaurs, we make sure that we buy him, these T-Rex, exactly right. And then, like my son wanted one of those thermoses, and my brother's like, "Why do you want that?" It's like the other kids have it. He's 4, so they notice these things. So making sure they don't feel too isolated, too strange, but trying to find the clothing that fits our principles, but at the same time falls in line with the culture. And I was having a conversation with a revert in OCIF who's of Native American and Spanish descent. And he's all about the cultural aspect. He really likes his culture. And I said, what you can do is take your culture and introduce Islam to it. So if your daughter likes fashion, put her up to the task. Say, can you make an Islamic attire that expresses our heritage? So when a lot of imams wear that one-piece gown, that's not Islamic. That's Middle Eastern. Right? That's Middle Eastern, but it fits our Islamic expectations. When you go to the sub-Asian continent, they're dressed differently. They're very colorful, and in the Arab world, it's like black and white. That's it. It's not too much going on there. But the sub-Asian continent, it's colors everywhere, but nonetheless, they're within the guidelines of Islam. When you go to Southeast Asia, right, the women dress in the Islamic way, but that represents their culture. So the Spanish community or Spanish-speaking community, the Latinos and Latinas can do this. Native American, you can do this, right? And put your children up to the task if that's what they're passionate about.
The kids like to say, it's because my friend says because I see,
It's okay. We don't want them to feel left out. So long as it's permissible, why not? And let them know that Islam is reasonable. It's not everything has to be different. Look, we have these few things that are haram. Everything else, it's okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's not really on the topic, but kind of. Can I be a godmother to a non-Muslim child?
Can you be what?
A godmother?
So I really don't, because it's not part of our cultures, like a godmother. What does a godmother mean?
It's like godparents.
Oh,
It's like a fair godmother, I would say. Like if something would have, it's like co-parenting with the other parents too.
yeah, that's fine.
It's fine, but then like I
Yes.
have to attend the ceremony, and it's a Catholic church.
What happens in the ceremony?
Well, the priest pretty much just, call all the godparents and kind of like preach like, like being a good parents or a good second mother or second father to the kids.
Are there any religious rituals that go on?
Kind of, 'cause
Yeah.
they put like they baptize the kid.
No, but on you yourself.
Like I have
the-
to do, no, like I just have to stand there and listen.
So I don't think that's problematic. If you can say, look, I'd rather not be, I'm more than happy to take on this responsibility, but please excuse me from the rituals or being there on that day, right? If you can do that, great. If you can, I don't see anything clearly problematic about going and just being present while this happens. I think there's more to gain from this than to lose.
Okay.
At least Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, my best friend knows that I'm a Muslim.
Right.
By the way, I told two of my best friends like the other day, and I was so happy. So I'm doing it slowly, by
So even if that's
so
an
they
unspoken,
know already that I'm not
right, even if that's an unspoken condition, that condition is we don't consider it. Okay,
I
okay,
think
yeah,
the
sure.
intention is, I believe if your intention is really pure for the child, if you're going to raise a child in a good manner and, worship God, I mean, we only have one God, but
But even if the priest were to say, do you agree that if something happens to the parents that you will raise them as Catholic? Say yes, and if that happens, you raise them as a Muslim. Right? Forget about it. It's a omitted condition. It's not accepted in our hearts.
got it. Okay. I just want to.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. We're going to call it a session there if it's okay. Actually, there's a few, same question online. If Sheikh Tarik, you can just help us out and we'll close with that. Actually, two questions. Is it okay? Yeah, Sheikh?
Yes, please.
The first one, of course, is today is Mother's Day. So the question is it permissible to celebrate Mother's Day and other secular holidays like 4th of July, etc.?
So these non-religious holidays are fine. But when you look at each one independently, there are some concerns that we will have with birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, not in what they are, but in kind of some of the consequences that occur as a result of these specified days. So Islam looks at age as kind of a road to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The older you get, the closer you are to accountability. And so celebrating getting older is kind of counterproductive to our vision of life. If we get older, then it should be a reminder to us that I should be doing more. I should hold myself more accountable before I meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not saying that celebrating a birthday is haram, but I will put one condition, and that is don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. People who have birthdays that are a huge party, and then they get 1,000 gifts, and then when Eid comes along, it's like, who cares? Oh, I only get 2 or 3 gifts on Eid. My birthday is more important to me than Eid. That's a huge problem. That's a problem. So if you want to have a small kind of you and the family, that's it, and celebrate it between each other with a cake and buy them some gifts, no problem. It's better to kind of satisfy that urge when they're younger so that later on in life they kind of, who cares, whatever, it's my birthday. When it comes to Mother and Father's Day, in Islam, every day is a Mother and Father's Day. It's not just one day. It's more marketing, which is okay. You want to take your mother out to, your father out to dinner, you want to make them dinner, you want to buy them a gift, whatever, it's perfectly fine, something wrong with that. But we don't want it to become a day where this is the only day where I honor my parents, or this is the only day where my parents really have a higher position in my mind. It has to be every single day. That is our Islamic principle. Now, when it comes to 4th of July, 4th of July is fine. I mean, just a national day, whatever. So it's no problem going to a park and enjoying the fireworks and all of that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Sheikh, because of course there's always like differences of opinions. If somebody comes across a difference of opinion in this matter or some other matter, can you help us into how to go about that difference of opinion so that it doesn't become a big issue or a debate or something like that?
Well, the principle that the scholars had with each other is that on issues that are differed upon, no one has the right to condemn the position of someone else, so long as it goes back to sound evidences from Quran and Hadith. All right. So there are a few opinions when it comes to celebrating holidays. My opinion's kind of, I think, in the middle. There are some opinions that are a little bit looser, and other opinions that are stricter, where no holiday is allowed except the 2 Eids. That's it, period. And so if someone has that position, okay, no problem. I can't reject that. I can't condemn you for holding that position because it's a valid opinion. I can debate that person, fine, nothing wrong with that. I can ask, okay, what are your evidences? Nothing wrong with that. But so that's the first point. The second point is it an issue? Is the issue an issue of desires, or is it an issue of life conveniences? So some things are about a convenience in life. It'll make my life a little bit easier. If I take the opinion that it's allowed, it makes my life easier. If I take the opinion it's not allowed, it makes my life difficult, a little bit more difficult. Here, so long as the opinions go back to valid positions, right? The four schools of thought, a reputable scholar, then you are free to take which one you want. You are free to take the one you want, because the Sharia came to organize our lives, to bring ease to our lives. You're not responsible for dissecting the evidences and trying to figure out what is more in line with Quran and Sunnah. You know, very few people have that breadth of knowledge. And so you're not responsible for that. What you are responsible for is following those who are reputable. Because, not because of who they are, but because they're sourcing their information in Quran and Sunnah, which is really our main responsibility. Now, if the issue is an issue of desire, then my recommendation is to go with the one that rejects your desire, that pushes your desire aside. Why? Because, you know, desires are our enemies, and the more we suppress our desires, I'm talking about and issues of halal haram, not in issues that are permissible. If you have desires that are permissible, then, you know, it's there for a reason. But an example, I can't think of an example when it comes to desires. For example, should I celebrate my birthday? There's a desire here. People give me gifts, people take me out for dinner. There's a type of desire here. And if I'm torn between which one, personally, I would go with the one that's going to push my desire away, just to keep my heart balanced and healthy in terms of iman. That's my recommendation.
All right. Sheikh, last question.
I'll add one more thing. Now, generally speaking, if you don't know, someone said this and another person said that, and you don't know which one to take, it's not an issue of convenience. It's really not that relevant to your life. And it's not an issue of desire. Whose opinion should I take? Take the one who you think is more knowledgeable. Take the one who you think is more knowledgeable.
All right. Last question, and then I know we were going a little over, but thank you so much for your patience, Sheikh. Last question here is, Assalamu alaikum. If children are raised by parents of two different faiths, one child following Islam and the other does not, how do you bring the other child to Islam? This individual mentioned they have 4 to 5 clients who are in this painful situation.
Yeah, that's very difficult. I don't know of an interfaith marriage, except that the children are all over the place when it comes to faith. And the reason is one of two things is happening. Either there's a battle between husband and wife. Each one wants their child to be raised on their faith. And so that battle confuses the children. Not only that, it pushes them away from either of the two faiths. The other thing is the husband and wife come to an agreement that, you know what, we're not going to bring these issues up, and our children are going to have to kind of find their own way. Or we're both going to introduce our faiths to our children. So I've literally seen this before, where in the school next to my masjid, a parent came, the father who's Muslim came and started to scold the teachers. Why? Because the teachers are teaching the kids that we don't celebrate Christmas. It's like me and my wife have agreed that they're going to celebrate Christmas and they're going to celebrate Eid. So you get this mixture. It's not really a faith, it's desires. You follow whatever you want, you do whatever you want. That's the message that's sent. So that's the unfortunate reality of interfaith marriages. This is why I don't do interfaith marriages. Even if it's a Muslim man and a Christian or a Jewish lady, I don't do it. It's disastrous. Divorce rates are 90%. 90%. And even the ones that succeed, the children are all over the faith when it comes to faith. Our role, our number one goal is to preserve the faith of the children. And that's simply not going, it's very rare for it to happen. Yes, there are cases of the previous generation where they came, they got married, and it was very clear, our children being raised as Muslims, right? But that's rarer. And I'm not going to make I'm not going to allow this personally, because in some cases, the wife becomes a Muslim or in some cases, the husband is successful in raising his kids as Muslims. I'm simply not going to do that. I can't make that exception. Now, when it comes to what the person can do, you know, this isn't really I'm not very experienced in this regard. It's upon the parent to do their best to do the things that we did today. Instill these things in their hearts and their mind, hopefully when they're younger, so that at least it opens the doors. Now, just like our sister Catherine, right? Your mother opened the doors for you without realizing she's opened the doors of Islam for you through these very simple things. And the ones that I chose today, by the way, are easy to navigate when you're in such a situation. Their father, your children's father, is not Muslim. I highly doubt they're going to come and start complaining to you and saying, "What are you doing?" because you taught your child that God is loving, or good behavior and good characteristics, or you're telling them stories. It's not a direct conversion, if you understand what I'm saying. So perhaps a person can start with these things: being a Muslim, and having a healthy relationship with their child, with their children, to where their voice is important to their children, and then hopefully the doors are open, and later on in life, when they're in their 20s, when they're more independent, then you've set them up for them to actually either continue to be Muslim or to enter Islam if they weren't previously identifying as Muslim. And again, this isn't my field of expertise. I do recommend that you get the advice of Muslims who are in this field. Maybe reaching out to Sheikh Hassan Alwan, that would be a good resource in this regard. Who else is good in this? That's the first name that comes to my mind.
All right, thank you so much, Shaykh Tarik, the religious director of OCIF, Orange County Islamic Foundation, Mission Viejo. Thank you so much for being with us here today and being patient with our questions and a beautiful and very educational topic. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everyone here as well and online, a number of you for opening up and great questions, inshallah. A few announcements and we're good to go. The first thing is I just wanted to thank Shaykh Tarik on behalf of the New Muslim Group. Of course, during Ramadan, Shaykh Tarik was available via call and text on his phone, which I really appreciate. So thank you, Shaykh. Hope we didn't, send too many calls or text your way, but we appreciate you being available for those last minute questions that we all have in during Ramadan. So thank you so much, Shaykh Tarik.
Anytime. Please don't hesitate to send me a message. Someone said that they were going to do a group. That still hasn't happened. Last time I was here. What's the sister's name?
Group
A
for
WhatsApp group. They said they're going to start a WhatsApp group so they can ask me directly as a group. Or
So whoever that was, so we're waiting for that
it
person.
was the strong lady, the heavy lifter.
Inshallah. Okay, alhamdulillah. Maybe we'll revisit that, inshallah. Whoever the person is, inshallah. Second thing here is we had our food drive yesterday, so I want to thank everybody that came out, all the volunteers that came out to help out. And again, in addition to what Shaykh Tarik is saying, another way to keep the momentum going is to take advantage of these opportunities that are here at your masjid. So the volunteer opportunities are there, alhamdulillah. The food drives, the diaper drives that we do for the greater community, Muslim or non-Muslim, it doesn't matter, anyone that needs help. So please, we always post those in our WhatsApp group. If you're not on the WhatsApp group, just let me know and I can add you. So this way you can join us, inshallah. And of course, just want to echo what Shaykh Tarik said, and that's that everyone that's online, may Allah bless you. We appreciate it. I know some of you are at far distances, but for those of you, if you're close by, we would be very happy if you were to join us here on site in class, inshallah. And I hope, of course, next week we'll reintroduce our lunch, which typically we do on Sundays. So inshallah, we'll have that as well. And then I also wanted to just take this opportunity to welcome two new people that at least I've met for the first time, and Nelly and Alexa. Did I get it right? No way, I butchered it like 4 times. So this is their first time, at least for me and for our Sunday class. So welcome, thank you very much for joining us here for the class, inshallah, God willing. And with that, again, Shaykh Tarik, thank you so much.
I have one point to add. You just brought up a good idea. For the individual who asked about interfaith marriages and how to bring the children, if the Muslim parent can take them to these humanitarian events sponsored by Muslims, it doesn't have to be we're going to the masjid, so it doesn't create conflict with the other parents, but we're going to do something humanitarian, which is very valued in American society, and it helps integrate them into the Muslim community, see Muslims on the ground, and to do something that Americans find important and valuable. So that's a good way to maybe practically bring them closer to the faith.
Perfect. And even on that note, even with the kids here, so if parents want to bring their kids, their nieces and nephews, and want to help, let the kids. We've had actually some kids come and actually box the food in the bags. It's really nice. So encourage them to come, even if it's just for 10, 20 minutes. They get to see actually making, like, imagine they're making their own bag. They put some spaghetti in it, some fresh vegetables, and we got some, whatever else that we have there, and then they actually are able to put it in the trunk or give it to someone, right? That stays for a long time, and that's giving back. So please do consider that as well. And having said that, inshallah, we'll call it a session. If everyone can help me out, we'll put the tables and chairs back on the rack. And inshallah, please don't forget our Friday class, Coffee with the Sheikh, coming up at 6:30 this coming Friday, inshallah. Thank you all very much. Assalamu alaikum.